Do you want to be the Bronze Age Alexander the Great? Do you want to crush your enemies, see them driven before you at— okay, you already know where this is going. I'm gonna show you how to use each unit type to its max potential and how to counter them. So sit back, relax, and get ready to paint the map red, or blue, or purple, or— I really don't know what's your favorite color? Shock Infantry was amazing on Dynasty's launch, and the last update broke them even harder. They will destroy anything they touch, whether it's the prehistoric spear chargers or the highly technologically advanced clubmen. All Shock Infantry excels when flanking or rear charging, and this is where the micro kicks in. All these units have an insanely high charge bonus, so you want to charge the enemy, wait a few seconds to get the most out of the decaying charge bonus, pull out, and repeat. If you want to relax and let your brain go on a vacation, you can charge infantry head-on. Shock units can win quite a few matchups, but they will get outgrinded by good swords. Units with a high model count? That's also a big no-no. I always recommend overloading a flank with shock units. You put all of them on one side, charge into the enemy when they're engaged, you wipe that flank and destroy the rest of the army. Simple and effective. Now, let's look at the 3 different shock types. Spear Chargers are the most versatile shock unit. Not only do they have high lethality and offensive stats, they're also tankier than other shock infantry because of their high defense. They can comfortably win frontal charges versus the vast majority of the infantry in the game. They can beat other shock units and destroy a flank, and mounted units. It takes them a bit longer to kill after the charge because of their weapon type, but they are just a fantastic choice. If you want the most flexible shock infantry, Spear Charges are your safest bet. Trust me, they're a lot deadlier than you think. Some amazing examples are Palace Guard, Heavy Shock Spears, and renowned Palastu Spear Chargers. Okay, at this point you can pretty much pick Palisade for almost any unit type in the game. Two-handed clubs will obliterate infantry and destroy armor. They have very high killing power and decent survivability in close combat. There are so many good two-handed club units in the game, it's hard to go wrong. Just for the love of all the gods, never recruit Akkadian Chargers. They're bugged and will completely let you down compared to other clubs. Arzawan Chargers are amazing if you're playing in the Aegean, so are the cheap Achaean Hillmen. If you're in the Hittite court, Royal Hittite Chargers can also break quite a few backs. Two-handed axemen have monstrous damage and charge, especially against shielded units. They're more micro-intensive as their melee attack is a lot lower than other shock infantry unless they're against shielded enemies. They're made to destroy them. High-tier two-handed axemen are pure monsters. Marauding axe chargers are basically violating the Bronze Age Geneva Convention how strong they are with their breakthrough charges passive. Every faction can get them if you luck out with your warrior's refuge spawns. If you want to bully the helpless AI with axemen, Irsu and Emar have Henku warriors and they're heavily armored, absolute murder machines. Not only are their stats disgusting, they also have one of the most broken abilities in the game, where they throw pocket sand and reduce the attack and defense of enemies around them. I wish I was joking, by the way. Seti also has amazing elite axemen. So, what's the best way to counter shock infantry? Ranged units are the answer to everything in the game, we've seen that, but if you have higher priority targets to shoot, blocking the shock infantry charge with a low tier unit and then charging them with another is the ideal play. Even elite shock units will eventually lose in a grind to decent mid-tier swords or axes. A good chariot charge will also turn them into roadkill. Ranged units are the name of the game in Dynasties. If you leave them unchecked, they're just gonna counter anything. Even the pathetic AI can do some serious damage if you don't take him out quickly. So what's the best way to use them and counter the enemy? Luckily, we have a few efficient ways to do this. The first and easiest one is counter-skirmishing. Spread out your units into the thinnest lines possible, so this will make you win the range duel decisively. Focus fire all your ranged units onto one enemy unit. This works the best because the AI just can't respond to it efficiently. If you see a forest, get ready to set up camp because those trees are gonna give you a 40% missile block chance. This turns ranged duels from decent trades to actual massacres. You already have high killing power, but direct shot will increase it even more at the cost of range and trajectory. It's best used if you don't have any risk from enemy archers, where you can position your ranged units on the flank and tap the enemy from behind. If you're getting charged by chariots, direct fire is pretty much guaranteed to annihilate them. Fast shock infantry will easily catch and destroy ranged units. Vanguard units are especially good at this because you can hide them behind enemy lines and give the enemy a nice pat on the back when they don't expect it, and preferably with a big stick. Mounted units are the natural predators of skirmishers. The AI just can't defend itself against good chariots and cavalry. Just for the love of all the gods, don't charge them through mud. You're just asking for a Bronze Age Agincourt. Slingers might look good on paper because of their range and ammo, but realistically, they're terrible. Their damage output is low, and it takes them too long to get value compared to archers or javelins. There's only two specific situations where slingers are not a dead weight. Slingers with scatter shot, such as renowned armored slingers and exemplary Trojans, as well as heavy shot, unique to the Elamites, will decimate low armor tier 3 archers. They can also snipe AFK chariots, but that's about it. They're just outperformed by archers in every scenario. If you have to use them, place them as far as back as you can, let them try to counter skirmish, and if you get the chance, flank and direct shot. Countering slingers specifically, anything does it, seriously. But if you want the easiest job, get some good archers, chariots, and fast infantry. If you really want to throw rocks at people and I can't stop you, Babylon has insanely efficient Silulu slingers, as well as the Babylonian specialists, and easy access to Elamite veteran slingers. Troy's exemplary slingers definitely set the example, as well as Bay's veteran Canaanites. As long as they can fire safely, archers will obliterate the enemy no matter the unit type. Great range, great damage, and high lethality, all of which scale with unit tier and campaign upgrades, means that you pretty much have Bronze Age machine guns if you want them. All archers in the game are useful, but if you want some notable examples, if you're trying to decide an archer-heavy faction, I can recommend the Palisade. The Palastu renowned archers are brutal. Amenmeth's armored Kushite archers and Tasseti longbowmen also break the game. If you luck out with warrior outposts, every faction of the game can get access to Aegean armored archers, an absolute monster of a unit. We covered the general ranged counters, but if you wanna specifically destroy archers, the easiest way is, well, you guessed it, with your own archers. Because the AI can't respond effectively to focus fire, pick them off one at a time. And this gets easier if you have an Archer Master General. You will have much higher range than the enemy, so that eliminates any counterplay. The Bronze Age Holy Hand Grenade. Not even the protection of the gods can save the enemy from javelins. If they get in range of anything, they're gonna kill it. Brutally. Head on, flanking, you name it, but ideally you always wanna unload your ammo into the enemy's rear. If you wanna squeeze in a bit of extra DPS with units that have shield break, fire a volley with that mode to reduce the enemy armor and switch back to standard shot. Javelins will turn chariots into scrap metal, and a huge shout out goes to Abiru skirmishers. So this unit, like most Canaanites, has spear and the spokes ability. You target an enemy chariot, you do a ton of damage, and you slow it to a crawl. Even elites will die to this. Even the cheapest javelin units in the game can cause monstrous damage, so it's hard to find something to recommend, but my personal favorites are Seti's veteran Levy javelin men because they have a huge unit size, which means more firepower. Exemplary ambushers are disgustingly broken, and if you're ever in the Aegean, go get them. And the previously mentioned Abiru skirmishers if you really want to ruin a chariot's day. So, how do we counter these throwing sticks of destruction? Well, you throw smaller sticks at a longer range. No, seriously, archers, the longer the range, the better. Chariots are extremely risky against javelins, in the case the javelins actually shoot at you. Fast vanguard infantry is a great option as well. It's time for Death on Wheels, chariots. So, They counter everything if you micro them well. No, seriously, even spearmen, but for the love of all the gods, please don't charge head-on into good spears in formation. After you charge into a unit, instead of just spamming the drag order through, it's usually better to spam an attack order to a unit behind and try to charge through the units if you want to get them out and do more damage. If you want to minimize damage done to your chariots, as soon as you charge a unit, after you connect, press the return key, which is by default set to J, but you can rebind this. It will instantly turn your unit around and try to get it out of the battle line. It's so much cleaner than manually ordering your chariots to retreat after you're stuck in a battle. Try it and you'll see the difference. Chariots are micro-intensive, but by the gods, they are totally worth it. There's a lot of good chariots out there, but some amazing examples are the Palastu chariots. Yeah, let's not talk about the Palisade anymore. The Royal Hittite chariots are pure monsters. And if you want a cheap option, Anatolian heavy chariots are perfectly fine throughout all the stages of the game. So how do we counter this quote-unquote tank of the Bronze Age? Horse archers will massacre melee chariots. Skirmish chariots are also a good pick, as well as foot skirmishers. Units with spear in the spokes, such as Habiru skirmishers or any of the Canaanite swords, they will slow chariots to a crawl and murder them without any counterplay. And for the more finesse option, you can just charge them with your own chariots and back them up with spear chargers. Crazy, I know. When it comes to missile chariots, we have two categories: javelin chariots and bow chariots. On average, their stats are a bit weaker than melee-focused chariots, but they can end up being a lot deadlier if you use their ammo correctly. Javelin chariots are murder machines that will melt anything they touch. Ideally, you use their javs to kill enemy chariots or shoot into the rear of infantry. They have pretty low range though, so that means good archers and well-microed bow chariots and horse archers will eat them for breakfast. Bow chariots need to spend a lot more of their ammo to kill infantry when compared to javelins, but they're still a good versatile pick. They're great at countering jav chariots as long as you keep them out of range, and they'll also eat melee chariots alive, especially with direct shot. Just like with all chariots, if you avoid direct fire from archers, javs, and horse archers, you will annihilate the enemy. If you want to play with both, Taustret is the faction for you because she has amazing options in both categories. For javelins in particular, the Thorns of Thrace are amazing. There's a lot of good bow chariots out there, but some other examples are Kurunta's Kashkian chariots. Both versions are great, and they got a shield, and the Babylonian nobles. Let's time travel into the Iron Age and talk about the best ways to use cavalry. And to start it off, here's a unit type which can solo win campaign battles if you master them. And if Total War is not the proof, let's look at real-life history and how much everyone hates this unit type. Yep, it's horse archers. They have monstrous damage output when you compare them to bow chariots because of their unit size, but they have low range compared to the highest level chariots. Horse archers will destroy chariots like a toy, especially with direct shot. Infantry, shielded and unshielded, you name it, they'll shoot it. You have crazy mobility, so shields don't matter. Horse archers are also pretty good in close combat after you spend all the ammo. They'll run down ranged units and weakened infantry without any problems. So what counters these bringers of doom? Archers with high range will obliterate horse archers if you run at them directly. It's not even funny. You can kill low tier archers without much damage or any at all actually if you get into the edge of your firing range, shoot, and move before the enemy shoots. If you move just as soon as the enemy fires a volley, you'll actually dodge the shots and take no damage. If you can spare the extra micro, this unit is just unstoppable. Fortunately, they're very limited in the game. Cimmerian horse archers in the Zagros Mountains, they're your best bet for every faction. Besides that, the Assyrians and Elam can get Ashur horse archers, which are just broken. Melee cavalry is so smooth to use. Lightning fast, they have great damage, but you don't want to charge infantry head-on with spear cavalry most of the time. They're gonna suffer if you leave them in combat. Cavalry is great at running down ranged units, rear charging infantry, and supporting against chariots. Now here's the thing. Most cavalry will actually get crushed by equal tier chariots in a 1v1. That's why they need some spear support. Now, elite cavalry like Ashur Horsemasters and Cimmerian Elite are a different story. They'll slaughter pretty much anything in their way. They can trade into good chariots, but they will take decent losses. Horsemasters can charge elite infantry head-on and even win some fights without much issue. Still, you want to use them optimally if you care about casualties, so always go for rear charges. Unless you just want a one-shot low-tier infantry. With good micro and baiting the enemy, you can take out spears as well, but not as easy as chariots can. So how do we counter cavalry? Chariots will destroy them without much issues, and elite cavalry will require some spear or javelin support to minimize losses against elite chariots, but realistically elite chariots will just eat them in a 1v1. Horse archers are fantastic against melee cav. There's another unit type that is a good support against cavalry, and it's technically in the same category, camels. They're squishier than horses despite having more health because their overall stats are just worse. They do have a fantastic debuff against other mounted units though. They give a -20 morale debuff to cavalry, which is monstrous. They won't straight up crush cavalry in a fight, they probably need spear support depending on the units involved, but the debuff is just crazy. Camels can do fine versus infantry when you're rear charging or running down skirmishers, but they don't have the staying power of chariots or better cavalry. Elite camel archers are fantastic though, and they have all the benefits of horse archers and camels, but their speed and range are a bit lower than horse archers and chariots, especially when you use them in the camel formation, so they require more micro and more careful use, but they're just amazing. The same counters to cavalry also apply to camels, just be careful of actually getting them stuck in melee combat, and the elite camels are not as deadly up close like the elite cavalry is. The only place you can find them is basically Abernara. If you want to focus on camels, play the Sutu, but if you want to recruit them, you can do it with any faction, you just have to conquer this area. One-handed clubs are a big joke. They're in a terrible spot, because they can't kill most other infantry types, and they don't hold nearly as well as swords or spears. Armor Breaker looks cool, but Axemen do their job much better when it comes to melting high armor units. Basically, outside of the very early game, do not recruit clubmen if you actually want to kill the enemy good. Their best use is to absorb enemy charges. Never make them your main frontline outside of the very early game. Just use them as disposable meat shields. If you really want to play Caveman Total War, I'll recommend Aramean Elite and Vanguard of Ptaleon if you actually want to have a unit that will survive. When it comes to countering them, the answer is everything. Any decent sword or axe unit will just beat up clubs with ease, and don't get me started on shock infantry and chariots. Avoid this unit type like the plague. Spears are great at holding the line, but they pretty much have no killing power on the charge, outside of a few outliers like Aegean armored raiders, but they can tank for ages and they can even beat some equal tier swords and clubs. And poorly used chariots. Spears are amazing at defending choke points in settlement battles and sieges, so just put them in spear wall and watch them hold wave after wave. If your unit has a large shield, this will also make them frontally immune to missiles. Remember, spears require you to invest into other units for actual killing power, so for the love of all the gods, get some archers if you're gonna run a spear-heavy army. So, how do we counter this immovable object? Javelins and archers fix every problem in the game, but if you can't get a good firing angle, it's so easy to just send axemen to destroy the spears. You can also rear charge them with shock infantry. What are some truly exceptional spear units? Aegean Panoply Raiders are offensive and defensive monsters when it comes to spearmen. Any faction has a chance to recruit them with the warrior outpost. Renowned Palastu Defenders, a huge immovable wall. Urartu Defenders and Guards are deceptively good. Axemen are great offensive infantry. They're gonna destroy spears and high armor targets, but they will on average take more losses in a long fight because their overall stats are just worse at grinding it out compared to most swords. Before Dynasties, they were undisputably the best frontline infantry, but they're still fantastic if you want to play aggressive. Just be careful of what you match them up against, as most axemen do have mediocre defense. Elite axemen like Marianu of the King or Hattushan veterans will make minced meat out of other infantry. Axemen can hold the line, but they're fantastic at flanking, and you can even cycle charge them because they do have a higher charge bonus compared to swords. Ignoring the obvious javelin and archer counter, swordsmen will beat most axe units in the game in a long fight. Chariots and shock infantry will also do their job as long as you micro them well. Besides the already mentioned elites, some other axemen you can look out for are the renowned Isuan axemen. If you want to gamble with Warrior's Refuge, Islander Raiders are also a top tier axe unit. Swords are great flexible infantry. In general, they have good damage, high attack, and pretty good defense, which lets them tank out and even beat more aggressive units. Depending on the unit in question, they can even survive shock infantry head-on. So if you want a multi-purpose unit that can effectively tank and flank, swords are a perfect fit in any army. Obviously, some units will be better at a specific role if they got improved flanking defense or improved flanking attack. There are a lot of good swordsmen in the game, but some are a bit more broken than others. Achaean runners are fantastic if you're playing in Greece. Phalastu swords are walking meat grinders, and all the elite Sea People swordsmen are just pure monsters. Henku Guard is great, and Troy's Chosen are a very efficient elite sword unit that can go berserk. Now let's talk about a very rare but amazing weapon type, the Khopesh. Now, Khopesh swordsmen are actual monsters. They have a great damage output because of their base damage and armor piercing split, as well as a bonus versus shields. Their defense is also pretty decent, so in a way they're like in between axemen and swords. There's just a handful of Khopesh units in the game, and they're all extremely deadly, especially with campaign upgrades. They can frontline, they can flank, you name it, they'll do it, they'll kill it. Upper Egyptian Khopesh warriors and Akkadian warriors are fantastic units that can serve you in the mid and late game with campaign upgrades. And if you want a faction that actually has easy access to Khopesh units, Ramses has brutal Medjay elites. So how do we counter swords besides the already mentioned ranged focus fire? Chariots and shock infantry are the easy answer, but if you want to get more personal, play Irsu and use Marianu of the King and just obliterate any swords you see. There's a lot more battlefield tactics and things to discover, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you learned something new, that's great, and if you didn't, then I'm probably a bad teacher, or hey, you're just gifted. If you enjoyed the guide, share it with your friends, or feel free to drop a sub. Every little bit helps, more than you think. There's a lot more coming, so stay tuned, and until the next time...